Sarah Carrier is with Adsum for Women and Children. So what is happening with these families now that it is the 1st of March?
Well, they don't have a lot of options. Most of the families are, some are unfortunately being forced to sleep in their cars. Some might have found a temporarily stay with family or friends, but, their situation really hasn't dramatically changed since earlier in the week. They are still homeless.
Well, what are the main reasons they're in this situation?
Well, to be honest, it really comes down to fixed term leases. As we know, we have a rent cap in the city of 5%, and that rent cap is tied to tenancy. It's not tied to units. And if, there was a change in that and we tied that rent cap to units, landlords would only be able to increase, rent once a year instead of every time that there's a turnover in tenants. So it's a way that landlords are able to circumvent the rent cap, but it's increasing the amount of families that we're seeing that are homeless.
Well, what kind of stress levels are they operating under right now, these families?
I'm sure we can all imagine it's horrible. I mean, to be a parent, often a single parent, single mom with multiple children who are in school, who have lives, and having to potentially uproot them from their community, it's mega stress, coupled with the fact that we're looking at like minus 20-degree temperatures right now. It's the perfect storm. It's a very stressful time in these families' lives, and there's not a lot of options out there for them.
Well, what has it been like for your staff who are fielding these kinds of calls?
Well, it's it's a day-to-day, in the trenches. We're fielding so many calls every day, and sometimes we can say yes, but our program is full. The shelter diversion program is full. Our housing is full. All of the shelters in the city are full. So there's not a lot of options we can offer these families, and it is brutal to have to say no and to hear moms crying and not knowing what to do, or having to stay in unsafe or unhealthy environments because they have no other choice.
Well, how big of a challenge is it to keep families together under these kinds of circumstances?
Absolutely, it's difficult. I mean, we're increasingly seeing very large numbers of families. So like sometimes two parents with, 4+ children, or, a mom and a dad with multiple kids. If there's not space in our program, families often have to be split up. Dad has to go to a men's shelter, mom, there aren't really any shelters in the city that accommodate children anymore. So she's having to find another alternative, which puts an added stress on families when they're not able to stay as a connected unit.
And at one point, does child services get involved? Is that one of the other issues?
Absolutely. I mean, if parents can't safely house their kids, and a call is made to child protection, there is the potential that those kids are apprehended. If families observe sleeping in a car, or kids are in a car, or having to tent, that is a prime case for child protection to become involved.
Well, are there any changes you think would help people facing these types of situations?
Well, as I mentioned before, having fixed-term leases have more stringent rules around them. Again, having landlords tie leases to units as opposed to tenancies, so that they're not able to as quickly turn over tenants. That they're able to have more longevity in their leases. There's other communities in Atlantic Canada that are using that model. PEI is a perfect example, and it works. And it's right now landlords have all the power, and we are all at the mercy of those fixed-term leases.
All right. Well, thank you very much for taking us through this. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Amy.